So, I wanted to say a few things about racism. I know, right? White guy talking about racism. Just another white guy talking about racism. And to an extent, you're right. But it frustrates me because better part of my life, since understanding what racism is, at least, I've done my best to try to negate it, and I get it. Like, I'm a privileged white guy. I know that. Things that I think about it are not the same as someone who experiences it. But there are things that I know about it because I've tried to learn. I've always been a seeker of knowledge, especially with culture, even from a young person. And especially from a unique standpoint, in that I know what discrimination is, I know what prejudice is, and I know what bullying is. I've experienced all of them, believe it or not. I'm not like people, and there's a lot of research out there that tells people within 5 minutes of talking to somebody, you know who they are and what they stand for, or whether you like them or not. And I'll tell you that the majority of my life has been spent not being liked, not really liked. Like, that's superficial. Like, you know what I'm talking about. Hey, man, how's it going? Da, 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 da. Because I'm different. Um, and I can prove it, but it's irrelevant right now. What is relevant about what I'm trying to say is that I do understand what it's like to not be liked. I do know what it's like to not be able to get a promotion because I'm not with the in crowd. I don't pretend, and I don't pay lip service to people. Truth creates its own sort of discrimination, even though it's relative and can be bias. Almost always is bias. But back to point, knowing what it's like to be discriminated against by other light skinned people, um, not in the same way. Don't think that I'm saying that, because it's not at all. I understand what that's like to be in a place where you don't fit in, to be in a place where they pretend to like you, but they don't really. They don't want things to do with you. But the important part of knowing that and knowing what that feels like, knowing that someone has to go through that every single day, or at least the worry of that every single day, that's a lot of stress, man. And I'll tell you, I'm in my own place with those things. Like, I don't really fit in anywhere, and I've made my peace with it, but I don't fear for my life. I don't fear for my life every single day. At least not from everybody in the world. And I'm not really afraid to die, so I'm okay with that. I stand up for my beliefs, which is why I'm doing this. What I do know is, on the flip side of all that, actually, let me backtrack a little bit because I think it's important to know where I come from and why I'm on this path that I am, and willing to share what I am willing to share right now. When I was a kid, I moved to West Virginia, and in the 80s, The place that I was in, at least, I don't know if all of West Virginia was, but the place that I was in, at least, was still segregated. And there was a place where the dark skinned people lived, and the white people lived everywhere else. And it was called a very racist name, and I don't want to go into that right now. But one thing that really stands out to me more so in that time, um, there was this grocery store that we would always go to, right? And there was a lady that worked there, and she was dark skinned, and her name was Candy. And I remember always thinking that she was one of the most beautiful people in the world. Not just on the inside, but on the outside too. And, she was always nice to me. And even by the age of like 5, 6, 7, man, we know people aren't nice to us, right? She was always nice to me. And that always stood out to me. And being younger, like, I was always a deep thinker, but, like, it never occurred to me. Like, because it was just, that's just the way things were. Dark people over there, light skinned people over there, right? So that's just the way it was to me. I didn't know any different. But then my grandma got sick, and I went to public school in Ohio for my mom to help take care of my grandma. And, like, I didn't have any problems. It was a very big melting pot. And I look back on it now, and I miss some of the people that I went to school with. I could tell you their names, but I never really got to know them outside of school. So, people in public it's kind of irrelevant, Like, it's a different thing. But nobody ever treated me different. But they were used to it. I never treated anybody different because I don't know. I'm just not that way. And some of those same people, I got to see them again at the beginning of 7th grade when we moved to Ohio from West Virginia after my grandmother passed away. And interacted with those people. Everything was all good, yada, yada, yada. But the one thing is, I got more respect from darker people than I did from whiter people. Now, then, I wasn't in that school for very long because we moved back to Pennsylvania, where I was born. And there wasn't a dark-skinned person. Later in school, there was one that I remember. She was significantly younger than us. I never met her because she was younger. And that was it. Until I went to college. Then it became this other issue. Because here I am in a place where there is a lot of not just multi-skin colored, but multi-ethnic, multicultural. And I embraced it. I didn't have any problems with it. In fact, one of the first friends that I ever made there, one of the first solid friends I ever made there, which we're still friends, by the way, is a dark-skinned person. And I thank God for him because he helped me a lot. He helped me understand a lot of things that maybe could have gotten me beat up if I would have said the wrong thing at the wrong time or whatever. And I also took Black History while I was at Edinburgh. I was a minority. For the first time in my life, I was a minority in that class. I think there was, if memory serves me, maybe 4 light-skinned people at most. I think it was actually 3. But I got a lot of respect in that class for trying. Moving forward, and in Edinburgh, I discovered my true interests in anthropology, which, if you don't know what that means, it means that we study humanity. Anthropologists study humanity. And that's very integral, I think, for my personal journey and growth. In that journey, in that part of my full journey, I learned a lot about various cultures, even ones that don't exist anymore. And then I get to fast forward again to University of Georgia, where I got to take multicultural women's studies in the U.S., which was a unique experience all in itself. I was again a minority. And I was also put in a bad position in that class. I was made out to be, because I said something I was ignorant to knowing that I shouldn't say something like that. I wish I could remember the conversation. And the professor chose that moment to make me look like a bigoted misogynist, which we all know how those opinions get formed, and they normally don't ever really go away. But the next class, I took time to think about it, so it was over the weekend. The next class, I pulled her out in the hallway before class, and I talked to her about it. And she apologized. And so, that being said, that gives you a little bit of my background and why I'm doing this. I am very, very, very tired of what I felt was a slow progression, completely backsliding. I am enraged at how people treat each other. And I'm sorry, but it's all sides. And I know people get on my case about my view on how things work. But I'm going to tell you, I'm going to tell it to the world because the world needs to hear it. We are all one humanity. And until we all start looking at our brothers and sisters, all of us, as being equal in our heads, until we start seeing it that way in here and focusing on that, nothing is ever going to change. We need to see it. We need to see it. And not to be cliche, but I'm going to quote Dr. Martin Luther King. I have a dream. I have a dream. He envisioned what he wanted for humanity. And his dream, I didn't know him. It may have specifically been for dark-skinned people. But ultimately, it was for everyone. There is no reason to think that anyone is a greater threat than another, except by their actions. You watch a person's actions and it'll tell you everything about them. Words, people say stupid all the time. People may not even know what they say, and it's stupid. I'm a very smart individual. I'm a very educated individual. And I say stupid. It's very easy to take stupid out of context. We need to use these, and we need to use these. We need to listen to what each other has to say. We need to use these to watch how people act, because it'll tell you everything about them. And we need to use this not for words of hate, not for words of anger, but to ask questions. Questions that lead to a better way to see. I'm not talking about color blindness, because we need diversity. Like I said before, I've never been treated better than the way that I was treated by dark-skinned people. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? Who's the problem? Who's the problem? Light-skinned people are the problem. I hate to say it, but it's true. If every dark-skinned person that I've met in my life has treated me better than even half of the light-skinned people that I've gotten to know, and I'll tell you it's a far, far greater number than that, dark-skinned people ain't the problem. I have met some of the hoodest people in the world. Guess what? They still treat me better. I've had someone that told me that they were going to shoot me if I would have been aggressive with them. Difference is, I respected him. He never felt threatened by me. Stop acting threatening. That goes for everybody. Just because you get mad doesn't mean that you have to be threatening. It just means that you're mad. And it doesn't give you any more rights just because you're mad. Everyone is equal. Rich, poor, dark skin, light skin, whatever. None of it matters. We all die. We all react to the same stimuli. We are human and we are a biological being. It's very, very basic. Quit getting caught up in your emotions because they cause you to say mean things, which causes someone else's emotions to make them say mean things. Be self-aware. Be self-conscious. Be mindful of your own self. And be mindful of how someone else might feel. And try to make amends with those people before you just get very angry with them for what they say. Because they have shoes that they walk in too, and you don't know where they've been. Be compassionate. Love everyone. Because without love, we all get left behind. All of us. I love you guys. Thank you for paying attention. Have a wonderful day. Later.